the Illuminati or the people who run the world, etc., you wouldn't be able to talk about it.
There's things on the other side of the moon and we've already got alien technology. Kind of agree that it feels like we're being prepped for that.
I just don't think we got it figured out. But do I think that there are other powers at play? Absolutely.
This is Ryan Drake. He is a business consultant who works with entrepreneurs to help them scale and grow their business.
I fell into coaching by accident. The coaching consulting industry is multi-billion-dollar industry. How do we understand when someone is pissed off, when a client is unhappy with us? How can we relate? How can we empathize? Being a good coach doesn't make you... And frankly, you have to learn.
Cosmic Money, the podcast. The strategy and energetics of seven-figure business.
Hello, gorgeous beings. Welcome to today's podcast. I'm your host, Sky Hanley, and I'm super excited about my guest that I've got here today. This is Ryan Drake. He is a business consultant who works with entrepreneurs to help them scale and grow their business. I know a lot of other little fun facts in there, but I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about his story and things like that as we unpack today. Hi, Ryan. How are you?
I'm so good, Sky. Thank you so much for having me join your podcast today.
Oh, of course. It is my joy where Ryan and I, this happens a lot with my guests. We just sort of sit here for like 20 minutes first, just having this amazing, catch up and talking about all things business and life and upgrades and, and entertainment and design and all of this awesome stuff. So I just said to you, I'm super excited for today's conversation. I'm like, we should already be recording.
Always the way.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, sometimes like the best nuggets are always off camera, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well that in relation to everything that we do, sometimes it's not the fabricated, really well thought out stuff. It's actually just the simple and the real and the human and the aspects and the life and all of that is fascinating and most interesting. So I'm going to ask you the big curly question just to begin with. Look, tell us, a bit about like who you are, what it is that you're up to, why you're the human that is sitting here today in this iteration of yourself, like what's come before all of this.
Oh my gosh. Where do we begin? Do we rewind to birth? When I'm coming out of my mum's room?
Yes, 0 to 1.
I mean, I feel as though and I'd love to hear your story as well. I fell into coaching by accident. My dad had Tony Robbins tapes play on the car when I would go to primary school. So I remember growing up and listening to him. Tony Robbins and my dad are the same age. So my dad went to Date with Destiny 20 plus years ago in Australia.
Wow.
And I didn't know what personal development was. I'm just listening and absorbing. And then I started working full-time as a software developer and moved around in lots of different roles in a marketing company that I used to work for and kind of grow brands, launch marketing campaigns for lots of big clients. And I launched my business on the side, which was a ethical, sustainable athletic apparel line a few years ago. And then I started running events that kind of leaned into complementing that business. And I guess a lot of us in the coaching and consulting space, we end up wearing our hearts on our sleeve, spending a lot of time giving advice for free if people are asking for it. And I sort of got to this point where people were asking to catch up with me for a coffee to pick my brain on something, and I did not have enough time in the week. I was frustrated because I'm like, I don't just want to catch up for coffee. If you're here to pick my brain and just ask me a bunch of questions, I'm like, I can buy my own damn coffee. And so then I kind of started to Google some of the pricing for masseuses and therapists. And I was like, well, I'm not qualified in a traditional sense through that lens. So what if I could charge something in between a massage person and maybe a low-level therapist? And I just picked a price out of thin air. Little did I realize that the coaching consulting industry is multi-billion-dollar industry, and so I kind of just winged it for those first few years, and yeah, slowly built my client base on the side of work until had enough clients to then leave my full-time marketing product role and then go out on my own. So it's been a lot of fun.
I think what I love about you and what you do, from the portions that I understand and know, is that you've been able to take what is your genius and your logical, analytical mind, but also your creation and care, and channel that into a way that not only suits you and your business and your life and how you want to help and support people, but also, it's highly marketable in its own right, because coaching is one skill set. I say this to our listeners all the time. Coaching is one skill set and business is another. Coaching is one skill set, and, IT and, building out automations and systems and, all of that kind of stuff, that is an entirely different thing as well. And you really bridge a beautiful gap that I feel sits within our industry, supporting people like in those ways.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Sky. Like, and it's something I said to clients last week as well. You can coach, doesn't make you, being a good coach doesn't make you good at business. And frankly, you have to learn other skills that add to your repertoire in order to get in front of people. If you don't know sales and marketing, you're going to be stuck. It's hard to build a business just relying on referrals alone, and the rate and the pace of change, I think, as well, particularly in our industry and being online, and like how fast things change. You have to be adaptable. You have to have other skills outside of coaching. Just because you're a good coach, that doesn't mean anything if you can't package it up and market it to people, because they don't know necessarily what you can do for them.
You and I have this conversation on and off all the time, like that sort of pendulum swing of the strategic, and the energetic and things like that. And, what I see come up a lot for coaches, much like you just said, they're like, oh, but, the right kind of people will find me, and I trust in the referrals, and the universe is going to send, like aligned humans my way at the right time. And, and I do poke fun at that a little bit, but it is with so much love, because it's our job to really have those fishing rods in the water, and reel in the fish. And we can't just sit there, if we're truly serious about helping people, like, and I mean to scale as in a large sense, we want to help a lot of people and serve a lot of people, then we have to get comfortable in what otherwise might be discomfort, and become amazing at marketing, become, able to market ourselves and communicate tangible outcomes, and, onboard clients in a way that is seamless, and run a program to scale, and all of those different bits and pieces. Otherwise, we're never going to have the level of service and opportunity that is actually available to us. And I think that's the greatest disservice, and even as you said, I'll say one more thing in relation to the referral piece. It's unpredictable. So it's like, it's not secure, and income will never be secure when your channels for lead generation equaling sales are insecure channels that you cannot consistently measure, nor can you scale referrals, and so they're great. Totally. We'll all take them, However, right, you want to run like long-term sustainable business that is predictable, and you can't do that, based on wishing to the universe that it sends you people, your way.
Absolutely. Like, good luck trying to forecast your 2024 numbers on referrals, because you'd have the most incredible experience. Exactly. You can ask people for referrals as well, or a review. All of that's great, but we don't hold guns to people's heads, and they're not inclined necessarily to do that. Particularly, Yeah, particularly if it's forced or it feels disingenuine as well. So everyone, I think, naturally refers people to good products and services too, and so that's the invitation for us to continue to deepen our level of expertise and delivery to ensure that our client experience is incredible. And then people naturally talk about it, absolutely, but you can't build your entire business on hope that your current client's going to talk about you. So
Yeah. So
yeah, and
in
to
relation
really,
to, yeah, you
sorry,
go.
you go.
They'll edit this out. No, you go, you go.
I was just going to say, Sky, that one conversation you and I have had, like you said, is this balance between the strategy and then the energetics. And you can wing a business to six figures. I've seen it done.
Yeah.
I figured it out. You can do that. You can make $100,000. Now, that's not in your bank account. That's just through the business. So you haven't been taxed. You haven't. It's frankly, it's not enough money to live on, especially if you live in Australia. So
Yeah.
yes, can you build a business to six figures just by coming up with stuff and taking action? Absolutely. But to then go from six figures to seven requires systems and a strategy. And I think also one really, kind of dynamic that I like to poke fun at the moment is this pendulum swing of people trying to really focus on being in their masculine or being in their feminine.
Mm.
And it's really interesting because if you go beyond seven figures and you sit in rooms where people are making multiple millions of dollars, or you have people who own $10 million companies, they don't give a shit. Because the reality is
Mm.
you have to balance both. You have to be good at
Mm.
both. You have to be able to move between them. If you're a male, you have to be empathetic to leadership and your staff going through things. Then you have to swing back into making decisions that are objective, that your company depends on you to do. If you were to sit just
Yes.
emotionally processing all day, like, you're completely useless to your company.
Yeah. We actually had this conversation with Stephanie Z, who I know you know as well. And we were talking about this, the popularity and even my own uh, journey with that sort of masculine, feminine, dynamic in myself, because there was a time there briefly that I was sort of going, okay, well, society says that I need to wrong these things that I truly believe are the best parts of me, my ability to take action, my decision making skills, my leadership, my all of this. And, but society says, no, you need to, surrender. You need to, be more in your feminine and da da da. And I had to sit there in that space of like, well, I agree that it's the adaptability, like a great leader of an organization, like, is able to adapt, dependent on the circumstance, within that organization that they're coming up against. And so I also kind of have this love-hate relationship with that idea of masculine and feminine energy. I just try to blank it out, to be honest with you, these days, because I think, if we're wronging um, any part of us, or if the pendulum has maybe swung too far one way or too far the other, if we can just bring it back into balance and just be ourselves and be whatever it is that our business and life requires of us at any given time, then, like, why would we wrong that?
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is if we look at society and evolution of different people groups, can we see different unique roles play out? Yes. One interesting thing, I'm not sure if you knew this, Guy, but recently the research that's come out has completely popped holes in traditional gender roles as well. And so hunter gatherers, where people would often think the men would go out and fish and the women would stay back with the families. Completely untrue. There's evidence to say the women were out hunting with the men, and in some cases actually
Yeah.
better hunters than the men. And so I think, what I find really interesting is the ones who maybe proliferate that distinction of, oh, you're not operating from your core essence, Sky, you need to be more in your feminine, are the ones who are going to
Mm.
profiteer off of selling you the solution. When in fact,
Mm.
up until even knowing the distinction between the two, your life was probably pretty good.
Yes. Yeah. I think, let's not unpack patriarchal bullshit. However, like, I learned this statistic, and look, I'm probably going to get it wrong, but for the purposes of communicating this point, I'm just going to go with some figures here. There's actually like a societal tipping point, and I learned this recently, probably within the last year, that's like for any mass, let's go with the popular thing of mass awakening right now, right? This mass awakening consciousness for us to believe that there are aliens or climate change or, whatever it might be. So there's a third of the population that is like, that is kind of like the aggressors in any movement, let's say, or any societal change or something like that. There might be a third that are sort of a bit maybe the aggressors. There's a third that are like, meh, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. I don't know. I can't be bothered. I'm not going to make a decision, And then there's a third that maybe disagree or agree, whichever the case might be, but are often the quieter, not minority, but they aren't the ones going, rah, rah, we believe this, we believe that. So it actually, in fact, only takes 1/3, apparently, of the population to believe a particular thing for society as a whole to find themselves in a tipping point, because the ones who kind of a bit like, I don't know, maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, they will just conform. So that loud third becomes 2/3 because, the pressure and the, whatever. And the quiet ones that are sort of like, look, I don't really agree with that, but ... right? Become the minority against the loud, aggressive, portion, and the conformists. And so I find this really interesting, in this time and space, and this is literally sociology. They've measured this in populations across time, and so we know this to be true again, even in religion and stuff like that. Like these major tipping points of ideas and ideals. And I think that we're kind of in a bit of a flux right now where there are a lot of these ideas and ideals and and new earth and expansion and consciousness and all these different things where it is starting to become a greater maybe proportion and a cascade eventually like happens as well. And so I'd love to hear like your perspective and opinions on those kinds of things, this change, this difference that we're in at the moment. Because even as you said, like what once was is not what we necessarily believe to be true now, and there would have been a tipping point with that masculine feminine job roles in their own right to be like, oh no, wait, the hunter gatherer is the men and the women stay at home. A tipping point within society would have happened for us to all go down that path of of belief in that, whether it was real or not.
It's really, Sky, it's really interesting because as you were sharing, then there's a couple of like social issues that come to mind that obviously quite heated online and divisive, and I have friends in both camps around, let's say, just say gender, and it'd be interesting to sit in this space of like observation and genuine curiosity about trying to learn. And one of my favorite books that I've ever read is called Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Have you read this book?
I haven't. No. What is it? Yeah.
Okay, so it's a fictional story. Now, when I first heard about it, I was so against reading it because people referred to it as the Republican Bible. And I was like, in my heart, I
Ooh.
was like, I'm not a Republican. I'm not, I don't support those things. I'm not
Yeah.
going to read it. And it
Yeah.
wasn't actually until a male work colleague told me he was reading the book and he said it was truly life changing. It's 1,400 pages. It took me 6 months to read, and I read it and I was like, wow, this is incredible. Even though it's fiction, it talked around morality and ethics as a society. And so the commentary of the book
Mm,
was written about the fictional 1800s railroad building in the US and how this was such a catalyst for the growth of the country. The reason I share that is
mm,
because there is a line in the book um, that says, check your premises. So whenever you feel like you know something, check your premises.
mm,
And really it's about making sure your biases um, and your perspective and opinion on the matter, like you have evidence to support it. So
mm,
what I find interesting, coming out of um, coming out of COVID, having again lots of friends in two different camps, and just sitting on the sideline, like observing and just listening to cultural conversation. Um, for me, what I've found interesting is then when I feel like I've got the answer that's true for me, I'm also sitting
mm,
in the can I question that and um yeah, do I have the courage to then also back that? And I don't have the same confidence as people in either. Like this season has really been
mm.
about observing
Yeah.
the conversation. But you know what? If I were to say that online, you just get cancelled. Or if you had one particular viewpoint, the people come out with pitchforks, and it's. I feel like we've lost
Mm,
the space to be curious about someone else's opinions and worldview, and we can sit opposite each other to
mm.
dissect and have a conversation.
I think, it potentially a portion of it comes down to, I believe this, like it's almost like a threat response, right? Like that we are now somehow threatened by the words or the thoughts of another human in some way. And we almost find that triggering or devaluing or whatever the case may be, but it obviously elicits a response. I'm with you. I love being an observer. Like that is one of my most favorite things to do is just literally sit back from any given circumstance, business or life, relationships, money, career, like whatever the case may be, health, and be the fly on the wall, and sort of go, okay, well, what can I take from over here or what can I take from over there? And then what feels, land in a place that both, yes, logically, but also feels aligned for myself. And to be able to do that from a place of non-judgment of others, as you said,
Mm,
I think is really important. That it's like, actually, you're safe to be over there and to think what, and feel what feels aligned for you. And I am safe to be
mm,
over here. It's literally, I don't know if you've done NLP, but it's maps, right? Like your map of the world, my
yeah.
map of the world. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. Like it's just how we're moving through our realities. And the more that we can be that observer, I find the less reactionary, like emotionally reactionary
Mm.
or triggered or things like that we are to these circumstances or another's opinion that may be different to ours.
1,000%. Like I totally agree, and I
Mm,
think the distinction then is actually recognizing that we are the observer. We're not life.
mm,
We're the observer of life happening, and that's our
mm,
work. When we're caught up in emotions, our trigger is when we snap back into our emotional body and we exist as the emotion rather than the observer of it. And to
mm,
like for me, I come back to cool. How can I be in the storm and still be so calm? that's the work that I'm most excited about, because then if I can be calm, I'm not swayed by my emotions. I can hold differing opinions, ideologies, things that might otherwise be in conflict, and then make a decision from that. And it's so interesting when I was thinking about COVID discussions, or like I mentioned before, say the broader conversation around gender as a whole. What I find interesting is how we can get so upset about someone else's entire existence that is completely separate from our own.
And has no
And
relevance
that
to
being
our own existence.
totally, yeah. So I'm like, oh, that's an
Yeah.
interesting thing,
Mm.
because that argument kind of falls over historically. I mean, always. Um, it Slavery was the norm, as an example, until someone said that it wasn't.
Mm.
It was
Yeah.
socially acceptable to own black people
Yeah.
in the US
Yeah.
and in Europe, and people
Societal tipping
forget
point.
that
That's such a great example of,
totally, yeah.
yeah.
World War II
Yeah.
as
Once
well,
something,
like
this was, yeah. Yeah,
sorry about the
once this was
Riverside lag.
acceptable, and then no, the delay. Yeah, on one side, something was acceptable for such a long period of time, like that greater portion, and there would have been people who thought, this is not okay, but at some point in time, society tipped, and the cascade occurs where it's like, no, now the norm is actually something entirely different. Like that's such a beautiful example of exactly what I was saying, yeah, before.
Sky, just curious, because this I thought just popped in my head. How did people awaken in the past? Because I haven't read anything about them talking to aliens or accessing fifth dimensional things. So do you have a theory on how society, the third, were exposed to these new countercultural ideas?
Ooh, fascinating. I have I have a portional answer, I feel, to that. And gosh, I'm trying to think when. At one point, I actually have a masterclass that I taught. It's actually a masterclass series around quantum physics, and and I taught on consciousness, and I taught on society, and and how it is that we're in the era that we're in now, and what has happened previous to land us in this place. And I taught it through one lens, so I imagine that there is a multifaceted answer here. And I will probably actually, to be honest with you, do a podcast on this, because I find like it's such a great question and it's so interesting. We went from, and I'm going to get these the names wrong, but we basically many years ago, we went from believing that the universe is in all of us, that everything that we touch, see, feel, is around us, that we are one with existence and nature and this planet and the energy that is all of that, the tapestry beyond matter, and I can't think of bloody what that was called right now, but we went from believing that, and then we went into an era which was more like, if you think about the Greeks and the Romans and how they removed God from us and they put it in everything else external to us. So it's like there's the god of the moon, there's the god of love, there's the god of thunder, there's the god of fertility, and assigned all of these roles to a variety of different gods. And then Christianity came along and said, no, that's not right, another societal tipping point. So I think it's like monotheism or whatever. And then, we went
Monotheism,
to, I can't think of the original one off the top of my head right now, which was, that God is within everything, including us. That was the original. Then we went to the, God is in all these different things, but still on the planet. And so we believed, that this spark, this universe, this whatever was still here on the planet. And then, Christianity and that style of religion came along that then went, I think that's the monolithic, like singular God. There is one. He is a man and he lives off the planet somewhere, and is completely inaccessible to you. And, and he has all these rules and that you need to, abide by that. And we actually moved from that period into again, oh gosh, what's it called? In like more the industrial, industrial scientific. And now we are actually stepping into where we are putting consciousness and God and the universe and a greater understanding of energy through what we've learned in industrial scientific era, about things like quantum physics, the science of it all. And we've now actually put the universe, spark, energy, light, frequency back inside of us. And that's actually a transition, or the flux that we're in now is stepping back into what we were originally anyway, which was that in fact it resides in all. It is all around us, that we are all source energy and all of those pieces. And we're in that flux, that tipping point of that at the moment.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I think history kind of like repeats itself and then comes full circle, doesn't it? And so it's really interesting to then look at, I guess, the interesting thing observing being in the personal development spiritual space as well is coming back into the observer role, recognizing there's all these other different things that are at play, like ego and shadows and all sorts of stuff. But what I find interesting is the duality of it all. And duality then still brings us back into this sort of human, first level stuff. And if we look at duality and how it plays out in life, well, it is the cause of so much separation, because we need to have an enemy. Okay, let's fight against the enemy. That person believes one thing politically or religiously, so they've got a different color skin. Let me create this degree of separation. So we're for and against. But the collective consciousness, I think you're also referring to, does away with that altogether, to say, well, we're all wrapped up in each other. That we're not removed from anyone else's pain and suffering. So if there is a war that is happening in the Middle East, we are both the oppressed and the oppressor, and we have to see ourselves as both. Because if we only see ourselves as one side of the one part or one side, then we too are hurting.
Yeah. I don't know. Have you delved much into, I'm sure you have, quantum physics and things like that?
Yeah. Maybe not to the extent that you have.
Like, love it. But for me, everything that we're talking about, like, you and I didn't set out today. We were just like, let the conversation go wherever the conversation goes. And so I love that, that we're having this, what may seem to people like a spiritual conversation. And I think for both you and I, it actually sits in all three realms. It sits in strategic, because it's the way in which that we move through the world and how we view society, and and the collapses and the births and the all those different things. It's behavioral, which is the human portion, and let's face it, even if like people who are listening, they're here for the strategy and energetics, right? It's both sides of the coin. But what I will say is that we are an energetic being. We are that universal piece. That is truly my belief. But we are here for the full human experience. And so we're here for the emotions, and we're here for the fucking mess, and we're here for figuring it all out, and we're here for taking actions and making decisions. What I was going to say about the quantum physics piece for that for me is that in my mind, this conversation we're even having right now, again, it's societal, it's behavioral, and it's also the science, because quantum physics, for me, is simply the science that was able to give me the clarity on the things about the universe that I already, that I believe to be true anyway. But because I have an analytical mind, and because I have, strategic and logical and whatever, being able to back things up. And when I hear you say, that exactly, if there's war in the Middle East, like we are the oppressed and the oppressor, at the end of the day, quantum physics says that we all come from the same, like, let's say, Big Bang, right? This same spark, that exploded and spread everything. Like, we are made of the components of the universe. We actually are, everything that was and everything that will be is connected within us. We also know that the universe is more empty space and energy than it is matter. That is science, right? Like, we are in fact energy. And so, this conversation is about that, we aren't removed from what is happening to another somewhere else, no matter how much we want to have that separation or fight against it or, it's like we are one in the same. We are all part of this same energetic experience, like here for a full human experience as well.
I love this quote by Matt Kahn, and he says, despite how peaceful, open, and loving you are, someone can only meet you to the depths at which you can meet yourself. And for me, the work that I think Abraham Hicks goes on to say something to the effect of, like, tell your friends they're off the hook because my happiness depends on me. And so let them know that they are not responsible for how you feel. And it's like, all of my work, ultimately, if I could sum up my own PD, and it's taken years to then get to this point, is I want to look at how I respond to the world and how I respond to people. Everyone is entitled to their own thoughts, opinions, perspectives, how they go away and operate. And if I have a problem or a challenge with that, I want to work out why that's the case for me. It's not my job to go and tell them that they're wrong or that, that they shouldn't do that. That's just how I'm perceiving them in the world. And yeah, I think I'm actually recognizing that if there's a war that's happening over there, this was an interesting thought process I had. I commented on a few people who were trying to sell me manifestation courses. So I just jokingly, one of my guilty pleasures, Sky, by the way, this is 10, 15 years ago on Facebook, before I was reformed and before I did all this work. I used to love starting debates online. And I would just argue with people on the internet, because I thought that was fun and it gave me a bit of a
Please
boost.
share.
I don't do that anymore. But what I found interesting was in this person's post in particular, she was trying to sell something around how you could manifest the results and your stuff could then influence. And I was asking her, I said, okay, so why can't we manifest the war stopping?
I've spent my life obsessed with the strategy and energetics of seven-figure business. I've literally traveled the world trying to crack the code. And what I've found is that when you couple the pursuit of making massive amounts of money with the strategy and science of success, plus having a desire for significant impact and contribution, magic happens. That's why I created a free 21-day next level vortex money mission magic. Hell yes to that. This 21-day quantum business challenge is here to shift you into new timelines and realities. 21 days to quantum shift your impact, business, and your bank account. These carefully crafted and channeled tools are the exact things I've used to create a life beyond my wildest dreams, and I'm not done yet. If you're ready for incredible transformation now in all areas of your life, More money and financial freedom, freedom of time, freedom of lifestyle, freedom of choice, better, more connected relationships, greater levels of health, and simply calling in more magic into every single day, then these 21 days are going to blow your mind. 21 days of powerful universal, behavioral, and strategic tools to quantum shift your internal state so that you start to see massive changes in your external reality, bringing the metaphysical into the physical. Join the challenge now and get ready for the most powerful 21-day expansion to quantum shift your impact, business, bank account, and your life. Cosmic Money, the podcast, the strategy and energetics of seven-figure business.
If that is how powerful you're talking,
oh, you're one of those, are you?
Yeah. I was like, why, like, genuinely,
Yeah.
why can't we do this? And I was asking her the question, and she didn't have an answer for me. So I said, cool. So we want us to manifest all the money. Great. We can't care about people in the same breath. And I said, the thing I think about is, if I have an issue with people, or I am challenged, or, to use the word, triggered, it's a prompt, it's an invitation for me to then take a moment to check in with myself and understand, cool, what's going on? Why has this person disturbed my inner peace? Because I also recognize that we are tied up in each other's existence. You can't run the race of life on your own. And I think this conversation is immensely valuable to business as well. It helps me to better understand my clients, to help understand what they're going through. So to your point earlier, Sky, this might sound like a conversation about spirituality and quantum physics, but in actual fact, it's very practical, because now we get to understand the people and the interactions that we have in life, and how do we better relate to people so that we can deliver on our services. How do we understand when someone is pissed off, when a client is unhappy with us? If clients are going through things in their world, how can we relate? How can we empathize with them? How can we give them tools to then navigate their own challenges as well?
And I think being able to have that separation and discernment, being able to be the observer, and also understand that, that entanglement, it is quantum entanglement, right? That all of these things that are happening within our reality, it's showing up for our benefit in one way, shape, or form. Give me 1 second. You reminded me of a saying that, what is it? What I wrong in others, I fix in me. What I wrong in others, I fix in me. And I had that realization a few years ago. One of my recent podcasts is literally about, the destruction and the rebirth of my own personal relationship with my partner and things like that. And, even when I was going through that, this saying, came to light, came forward for me. And I was like, okay, what I'm wronging in others, I fix in me, because we can't change another person, or have them, force them to see a different map or something, nor should we, right? And so it's all happening for us in our reality, so that we are able to observe, and so that we are able to change, in some way, to up level and to, learn more. I truly believe that.
Do you believe we're living in a simulation?
Ooh, I love this question. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that question as yet. I do believe that we are, that we aren't just the main player of the game, like the character rolling around. Like, I know that we're also not the gamer, the one playing it. I know that we are the fucking programmer and the creator of the whole damn thing. Like, I truly believe that. On all levels. I believe that strategically. I believe that behaviorally. Like, as humans, that's how our human mind scientifically works. We are creating reality through our observation of it and our own lenses, but I also believe it on that, metaphysical, quantum level as well. What do you believe? I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I think to a degree that perhaps we're in the video game of life
Mm.
and recognizing that this has kind of been a way that I've been able to blend all these different understandings of the world. Well, if we die, we don't pass the level, then we come back as a different character.
Yeah.
But understanding this and the perspective on if you do believe that, then this conversation gets to be really profound, because what we're actually talking about, I think, is the ability for us to also change and grow, and the identity and the understanding and the stories that we have of our worldview, our relationships, our health, family, how we view money, business. If whatever did not serve you in 2023, that's already done and happened. It's done. Like, the past is done. And I think people don't often, we intellectually acknowledge that the past has already happened, but we don't live like it. We live projecting the past into the present and the future. And we can hear it in people's language and stories. So they end up just recreating the video game that they've just played. They've just played this level. It hasn't served them. Maybe you're listening. You're like, yeah, 2023 was so-so. Didn't make as much money as I would have liked to in my business, perhaps. My relationships were average, whatever it is. We have to be careful that we don't just go into the rest of the year projecting that forward. And what I like to say is just our job is not to resuscitate dead corpse. Like, we're not supposed to breathe life into what's already been done. And if the future hasn't been created yet, then tell yourself a really damn good lie about the future you do want to create. Because everything we're telling ourselves about our money and about how hard or how easy it's going to be this week in our life or our business, it can be. Tell yourself a compelling lie about the future, get excited about it, and then go out and create that.
Again, we're talking like on all three levels again here, because to me, like, that's so the behavioral portion to it. It's like, go out there, tell yourself the lie, tell yourself it again and again until, this portion of you believes it. God, I could go in so many directions with this. You even said it yourself in your own journey that one of the first things, like your exposure to personal development, was, listening to those Tony Robbins tapes, like I think you said in the car with your dad on repeat. You're actually about the fourth or fifth guest, and that includes then myself, who has who we've all mentioned that a piece of our own story that is exactly like that, for me, it was actually The Secret, because I didn't have access or knowledge, in relation to anything else. And this is 20 years ago, when The Secret first became popularized. And it doesn't matter what people may think of The Secret and its teachings now. Back then, that was my gateway. And I needed that then, I needed something to support my transformation and and I needed it on repeat. I needed that repetition to hear it and listen, and feel into it again and again and again. And, and that brings me as well to another amazing transformative piece within my own journey that is related to what we're talking about today, which is the documentary, What the Bleep? Or What the Bleep? The second one. Everybody go out and watch the second one. That
I've
really
heard of it, but I don't know what it's about.
Oh my God, you'd love it. I think it's old. It's old, you guys. You've got to you've got to handle the fact that it is, at least 20 plus years old. But you could watch it now, and it is so transformative in relation to this work, and the next layer above that is where you start to understand in something called the unity field. So there's quantum physics, the actual science of the very large and the very small, and and the unified field. The unified field is In woo-woo, we call it the quantum field. In science, we call it the unified field. And the unified field is where all possibilities exist simultaneously. And that actually being the observer of a reality, of a thought on repetition, brings that reality out of the unified field and into matter, matter and reality as we, the human, perceive it. And when you understand that that is a scientific discussion, not a woo-woo universe one, like that fucking blew my brain up. That it's doing it. Oh, anyway, show must go on. We've got this. um and
Yeah,
so, yeah,
absolutely.
so What the Bleep is this like amazing documentary. It's like, it's over 20 years old. So you've got to get over the fact that, it's not, modern, modern looking and things like that. But, I rewatched it within the last year and it's so amazing. It is all about the quantum physics. It's all about the study of the very large and the very small. And, and it's really such an amazing gateway for people again to understand why our conversation isn't necessarily happening on this woo-woo level, that it's happening on a behavioral, strategic, and scientific level as well. And what I love is the layer above What the Bleep, is understanding that what we in woo-woo would call the quantum field, and I find that that is so like overused these days, and people can't actually quantify what the fuck quantum is and quantum field and all of this, and what the quantum field is in scientific terms is what's actually called the unified field. And the unified field is where all possibilities exist simultaneously, and that it is in fact the through observation of a reality, of potentiality, we snap that reality into existence, into what we understand as matter instead of energy. All right. And I could go way deeper into that, and maybe I will in a different podcast. But it's, what I want people to understand, I think, out of today and this point that I'm making is that piece of the conversation is at a scientific level. We know this to be true. Our best understandings of how the universe works right now, is that all potentials exist. All potentials exist. So whether it's a relationship discussion, whether it's a monetary discussion, whether it's a life or a war or a, whatever the discussion may be, that repetition, like you were saying, like I said, I had repetition in my life that was the catalyst for transformation, that observation of a potential different reality is exactly what snapped that reality into existence. And that is the unified field that we can prove and measure within science as well, not just the woo-woo side of it.
Now, isn't there parts of quantum physics that we cannot explain because it breaks all the other fundamental laws that we observe?
Yes.
on a day-to-day basis as well. That's what I find fascinating about this is, we have to remember too that what we're talking about is a theory. It's one observation of understanding the world. And what I find really interesting about this too is like, if an alien spacecraft came by to observe what we were doing as a planet, and it was this advanced species, I'd be so curious to understand what their commentary on our living would be. Because we literally kill people over some paper, cut down some trees, print some money on it. It's this arbitrary value. That to me is insane.
Yeah.
It's I don't know, it's such a fascinating topic as well, because when you dive into the quantum stuff, like there are only laws that exist to be true in that particular observation, and then they don't exist elsewhere.
Yes, yeah. We're doing the best we can in terms of the frameworks, and that's what's amazing, And I think that is a conversation for spirituality and science. That even in science, we're doing the best that we can with the information and our understandings at the level that we have right now. And to me, spirituality is such a mix of like Well, I always said my spirituality, your spirituality, somebody else's spirituality, whatever that may mean, whatever word people want to use, it's simply a culmination of observations and beliefs and understandings that I currently have, like with the frame and the worldview and whatever and my experiences, so I would never wrong another person for their expression of spirituality or belief or understanding, because I understand enough that that they're sitting in that position due to everything that has come before them, and I'm sitting in a different position, and there is no better than or worse than. These get to be my beliefs, they get to be your beliefs, and there are certain things in science, yes, that we can prove to the best of our ability with the understanding that we have right now, and we have to allow a certain amount of wiggle room even in that, because like we thought the world was flat at some point in time, and some people may continue to believe it's flat, some believe it's round. I don't know, that's probably another conspiracy conversation for another day, right? So on that note, I want to ask you, yes,
Sky, can I ask, how do you I was going to ask, so how do you then make use of your understanding of quantum physics and entanglement and you nerding out on this topic? How do you translate that into your own business success? What does that look like practically?
Yes, that is.
How have you used that knowledge?
That is such a great question. How do I use that knowledge? The piece that really is alive in me at the moment is everything that this podcast is actually about. And the tagline, for the podcast, as I said, I cannot shake right now, because it is the strategy and the energetics of seven-figure business. Now, I am equally obsessed with business. I love business. Like, I really do. Like, business gets to be the vehicle for me personally to channel all of the things, the gifts, the geniuses, the superpowers, the preferences, that I am. It's the vehicle for me bringing in greater human awakening in the way that I am able to do that, through helping coaching coaches kind of thing, right? And so for me, within business framework, I love business. I love behavioral science. I love human aspects. I love that we are chemical messes, of all the different things, of emotions and of, reactivity and all the stuff that we are, of experience, of love, of hate, of fear, of, all the pieces that come together. And I love the energetic, universal, greater mission, perspective, connection, consciousness, all of that. So I'm very lucky, and again, to use the same word again, strategic, about that I bring all of those pieces into everything that I do, because I am equally as fascinated with the strategy, with business as a vehicle to people's freedom and up-leveling and service, as well as the human portions that come up in that, and the greater universal piece that that is at play as well. How do you find same question back to you, how do you find that you bring all these amazing pieces that are you into the work that you do?
I think my favorite thing, particularly around this conversation, and we touched on it a little bit before, is recognizing how duality plays out. And so what I like to remind clients of is take your gurus off the pedestal, because what you are admiring in them, it's not worlds apart from where you are. Yeah. They still have fears, doubts, worries, insecurities. Those things don't necessarily stop them. And when you take them off the pedestal and you stop worshipping them like they're up here, and you stop worshipping your coach like they're up there. Yes, your coach has maybe a little bit more experience. You're paying them. You're in a unique role, but they're also human. You can have a completely different type of relationship with coaches, and it allows you more room to grow. It allows you more room to actually lean into the fullness of who you are, the expression of who you are, not just another copycat, not a regurgitation. And, Sky, what I love about you is all of your personality and all of your energy comes out. And whenever I talk to you, I get this beautiful galactic bubble on Facebook Messenger. And so straight away, the chat stands out from anything else. I learned a couple new things about you that I didn't know before we started to record today. I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Do we tell people those
Dabble in
things?
poker. I like doing all these fun things on the side. Like super fun. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's where you get to shine. And it's not you kind of jokingly said it before, the coaches coaching coaches. It's like, well, if you do put your person, the guru, the person you look up to on the pedestal, two things happen. One is you build them up to be greater sometimes than they actually are. And secondly, you discredit the strengths and the qualities that you have to also live and play at that level. And so what ends up happening, we see this in celebrity culture all the time. Someone famous says something that we don't like, we cancel them from the internet. We write them off. They make a mistake. They might cheat on their wife, whatever it is. And we say, cool, well, that person's done. They're a bad person. I'm like, well, hold on. As a society, we've built this person up to be God. Perfect all the time. That's not how they exist. And if we just take them off the pedestal, we actually can find our own voice. We're not just a copycat. Sometimes I think in this space that we're in, if you put a brown paper bag over some people who lead the space, I could not honestly tell you how they sound different from one another. There's no personality in it. There's no distinction that stands out for me.
Yeah.
So that's...
Let me ask then.
That's how I love applying that concept.
What are you finding then, like stepping into this amazing new year? What are you finding that you're like attracted to in terms of what's out there, like within industry, within business? Like, what are you seeing that is probably a reflection of you? But what is it that you're seeing that is like, ooh, that, or, that you're finding fascinating right now?
We kind of, I think we touched on it just before we started hit record. As a coach, you have to get really good at a whole lot of other skills. Being a good coach is like the bare minimum. You can't operate in this space anymore if you're not, because if you're not a good coach, you disappear. People who were here 3-4 years ago moved on to selling something else, like flogging piles of horse shit. Like, this is the bare minimum. And particularly if you're coaching business, you need to know what you can do for people. And so then you got to learn some other skills: sales, marketing, customer service, delivery, leadership, especially if you're building a team and you're scaling. For me, one of the things I've really tried to instill in clients is to say, guys, what you're reading about in the news about AI is like 10% of what is actually happening. The rate of change is happening so quickly that you as a coach, you need to learn this. It's not a matter of whether you think it's ethical or not. The conversation's already done. It's already here. We use it. If you're using Spotify, Siri, Google, Alexa, like Netflix, you're already interacting with AI all day long. How do you then leverage it so that you can get ahead in your business? Because my hypothesis is, over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to have lots more people who become multimillionaires in their business with only one individual. And so how do you leverage AI to help you with customer support and your systems and your copy and your marketing? And I've been really challenging clients as well around this story of working harder. Like, you can't compete. If you work harder and you give someone a tool and they can produce 100 times more content in 1/10 of the time, you're going to lose. So just learning, like being okay with learning how to upskill, I think, in this season.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. You you actually bring up a guilty pleasure of mine that I feel like I should share. Is
Yes,
yes.
hit me.
So I love Ryan and I were talking about this before. I'm a bit of a secret nerd that like I don't think people realize to the extent and that I am. And anyway, so I love a fucking good dystopian. I'm like, if it's some kind of like Japanese inspired dystopian apocalyptic, like robots have taken over, we're living in some kind of like, like grungy, like, society or something like that. I fucking love it. It is like my favorite. And so I sit here, when I hear about AI and everything it is doing for us and how far advanced, it actually is. I can't lie, but say there is like 10% of me that's like really celebrating the potential for like society's downfall so that we can live in some kind of amazing post-apocalyptic dystopian reality where I get to go running around with samurai swords and, and all that kind of stuff. That's pretty much like what plays in the back of my mind.
It's funny you say that because probably last year was the first time ever that I would have said I was remotely interested in like a doomsday prepping.
Yes, I
Because
understand the
I
merit
watched
in
doomsday
that.
preppers like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I remember watching that show like 20 years ago and thinking, oh my goodness, these guys are total nut jobs that
Yeah.
they're spending 3-4 hours a day preparing for something that hadn't happened yet.
Mm.
And yeah, it's really interesting. I'm like, well, are some of these skills beneficial to learn even if the world isn't ending with zombies? Like
Mm.
knife skills and how to tie a rope in different knots. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
How to function without like electricity, I hear you guys up there have just
Totally.
had like, stuff like that.
I mean, what happened? Like everyone freaked out when Optus was down for the day. It
Mm.
wasn't even down for the full day. It was like 8 hours, and then businesses couldn't run, people couldn't get paid. I was like, oh, that's interesting, but that's also very much a real scenario where someone could come in with like a signal blocker,
Mm.
block out a whole city,
Mm.
and then do some crazy black hat hacking in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, love your doomsday dystopian brain as well. I can't let you escape without asking you about some conspiracies and things like that. But I actually want to. You reminded me of something first that again I want to share. I remember I like this could be woo woo, this could be my psychic abilities, this could be quantum entanglement and timelines. But anyway, I actually remember having a conversation with my partner in 2019. I reckon it was probably like November 2019. And I think I saw somebody at a shopping center with a mask on, and I think that I think they were simply like from an Asian country or something like that, where there's quite a lot of pollution, and so they're used to leaving the house and having a mask on, and it spiked this thought or this premonition in me, let me tell you, and I was like, what is it? What would it take like to literally like have us all? I can't even imagine being here in Australia and everyone having to wear masks all the time. Can you imagine that? And I literally, said all this out loud to him. And the following thought, because I have through lines. So I'm like, okay, well, what actually would that be? And literally in my brain, I went, it would have to be some kind of, virus that is so transmissible that and that was what I thought. I didn't think pollution. I thought there would have to be some kind of virus that would spread so easily that we would all have to end up wearing masks and things like that. And as I said, I think that was like November of 2019, because I know how close it was to March 2020 and the world going a little bit crazy and all that kind of stuff. let me just get everyone a little scared for a second here, you guys, because I have a huge medical mind, as our listeners know. So there's something called stickiness, and stickiness is like how transmissible a virus or something is. So something like COVID is very sticky, it is easily transmitted between people. Something like Ebola, although horrendous, like, literally hemorrhaging from all orifices you could possibly imagine before dying within days, it's actually not sticky. And so, like, it doesn't, although, droplets and things like that, it's not as sticky in medical terms as COVID was. And in my brain, zombie apocalypse, I was like, something as transmissible and sticky as COVID, plus something as horrendous as Ebola, like that mutation, like being able to go out there, I'm like, zombie apocalypse, like tick, like it's just, like ready to happen, like that in my mind, if we all go down, and the doomsday prepper in me is like, I feel like that's the path we're going to take. So my question to you actually is, what air quotes conspiracy theory or thought process or whatever it is, it can be aliens, it can be dimensions, it can be the Illuminati and globalization and the powers that be, like, tell me, like, where does your brain go, and what are you really fascinated and interested in, like, what are you moving through and pondering at the moment?
Gorgeous being. It is truly my honor to have you here joining me on this co-created adventure through the strategy and energetics of seven-figure business. However it is that you landed here, whether we know each other personally or professionally, whether a friend shared this podcast with you as they thought you might get something out of it, or whether you stumbled across me by sheer accident or divine intervention, I want to thank you for being here, and I want to ask you a little favor. It is my joy to do what it is that I do every single day. And so if you have received anything here, a piece of magic, a strategy, a mindset shift, something that has transformed you in some way, I ask that you share this podcast with others so that together we can transform the world for the better. One business, one human, one frequency, and one podcast at a time. Cosmic Money, the podcast. The strategy and energetics of seven-figure business.
It's really interesting, as like this is so timely, because obviously the Epstein's list hasn't been released yet. So this is just some distraction. The list that's out there was from 2015. So then they're not releasing the information, I believe, until the 22nd of January. So whatever this is kind of covering in the media circus at the moment, I don't know. Really, I feel like it's really interesting because were you in QAnon groups during COVID?
I think I was in one, to be honest with you. Yeah, I don't know that I paid too much attention. Tell us everything. Tell us it all.
Intense.
Yes, I can imagine.
It was like, so, right at the beginning, you're kind of listening to this stuff and it's actually becoming true, and you can see it kind of play out a little bit. And, the John Hopkins University and Gates testing all of this at the end of 2019, all that kind of stuff. So what I find really interesting about conspiracies in general, because I think this will help explain what I ponder at the moment. As a definition, conspiracies are just, trying to understand the gaps in a story and fill gaps. I think as the human mind is very good at trying to patch holes, make up stories, all that kind of stuff. What I guess notice is how certain and how convinced people can then become about the conspiracy that they believe in, even if it's false. And there's been experiments. You can feed a conspiracy into Twitter, and I think the one of them that was faked, genuinely faked, was the Avril Lavigne. Avril Lavigne's a robot now, and they picked up all these differences, and it was just like photoshopped images. But this whole conspiracy went viral, and I was like, okay, so there's some level of, again, confirmation bias that we look for. So the reason I mention all of that is because um, I think even around the Illuminati or the people who run the world, etc., I'm not necessarily sure that we've got it
Mm.
anyway.
Mm.
Because if we knew the answer, I don't think you'd be here.
Yeah.
You just, like, if you landed on it and you knew actually what was going on, you wouldn't be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
They do a good job of like covering up the Hollywood pedos at the moment. So I feel like the ones who are talking enough about the Illuminati, and it's a nice story
Mm.
because plays into Dan Brown's novel of, you know, the Knights Templar and the Illuminati existing for thousands of years and a couple of different families and all that kind of stuff. And you have people who say, well, if the Earth's flat, then you go beyond Antarctica, and then the big families of the world own the other parts of the land. I just don't think we got it figured out. But do I think that there are other powers at play? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are on the record to say the Israel-Hamas wars totally orchestrated, like they planned it. Yeah. What about you? What do you feel is anything you're thinking about at the moment?
Well, I went down a nice rabbit hole. It's been a while, and I went down a rabbit hole on the weekend about. Look, I love again, being probably the space nerd that I am, and like to the point that even my puppies, like we have two pugs, and they're called Pulsar and Nebula. And so, I just massive space nerd. So anything that's to do with like secret space programs and that we've already, where there's things on the other side of the moon, and we've already got alien technology, and we're building crafts, and even at the moment, I kind of agree that it feels like that I hope a little bit. I hope this until it comes out within our lifetime, the confirmation of aliens as a societal norm. It feels like we're being prepped for that a little bit, that. And so I'm interested to see how that pans out. And again, my partner and I, we make jokes about this all the time, because it really is a double-edged sword, because I'm both like, yay, aliens, and yay, we're going to know. And also like a little bit fucking shit scared. And even sometimes when I Google stuff, like you were just saying, like I'll Google something and I'm like, they know, whoever they are, they know I'm Googling this. And I'm like, what is the tipping point of if I Google too much? Like, whatever. And I almost just freak myself out. So, but yeah, I love all of that. That's probably, anything to do with space and aliens, and like, and what's coming next, and what does that look like? And, yeah, that's my little secret obsession.
I love that. And have you seen the movie or kind of documentary called Above Majestic?
Oh God, I haven't, and now I'm writing it down. Tell me everything.
Have you seen that one? Okay. So they talk about NASA's secret space program, and so you've got a couple of adults who didn't know each other. They're on the record to say that their school went to NASA on an excursion, and they don't have full memory, but they feel like they were teleported to the moon or something and participated in experimentation. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I was like, wow, okay. And then the link to that I find absolutely fascinating with like Nikola Tesla
oh my goodness.
as well is he died poor, right? Like broke. He died broke. Any person who has hinted at anything to do with magnetic levitation, free energy is dead. You can't patent anything around that. I wonder why that's the case. I wonder why that is.
Yes, this is literally the there's on Gaia, there's a series called Microdose, and it's literally it's really great because it's about little 10-minute snippets like lots of little bits around everything. And so it's like secret space program and like, and all the Nazis that were given, I guess, like clemency or whatever it is to come to the United States, who started and built NASA and, all of these amazing things. And then, what were you just talking about as well? Oh, God. Oh yeah, and so there was like the
Like
free
free
energy
energy.
one, and there's like astral projection, and all of these different like amazing little micro stories or pieces that you can kind of like devour quite quickly. And so I just felt like that kind of a thing yesterday, and just like back to back a bunch of different things. Like but when you're talking about,
Was there any that jumped out at you
um
the most?
gosh, what jumped out the most? There was an interesting one about magic and the occult, and that's been really interesting. Again, I think confirmation bias. That magic, as as a concept, has been really jumping back out at me again lately. So I found that really interesting, and probably just a universal reminder to really be in the magic and you know there's this huge portion of me that simply believes whatever it is that we believe to be true, like is. So if I believe in magic and I go out and I do a thing,
Mm,
like even at a neurological human level, something is going to transform. So it doesn't actually have to be woo woo to believe in magic. It can simply be behavioral and the human aspect. Because if I believe it and then I go and enact something that I feel like, if I put good energy into something, I just think that it changes our
mhm.
neurology and we're going to be attracted to more of thing. So like I just think, why isn't magic real? Why doesn't it get to be real, like, on a human aspect and a universal one? So that probably jumps out at me at the moment. Um and as I said, exactly what you were
Mm.
talking about, these stories of being teleported to different places and times and whatever. A funny thing happened recently. My We drive to get to our house. We can choose to drive down some very kind of long, dark roads, that are very isolated, and sometimes we drive that way because my partner likes driving his car fast down these beautiful long, straight roads, and we'll go animal spotting and whatever in the night and stuff. And but again, there's that 10% of my brain that's like aliens. And recently, the clock in my car lost 10 minutes, like just out of nowhere. And
Okay.
that actually is part of what,
Yeah.
like, in X Files, that they often get abducted and they lose time. And so I'm like, oh my god, like the clock in my car has lost 10 minutes, what the fuck? Like, and whatever. And no, I don't think I've been abducted. We're okay, everyone. But it's just these little pieces that I always find sort of interesting, that both are fascinating to me and then sometimes freak me the fuck out as well. And I'm like, how far down the rabbit hole am I going to
Mm.
go?
And at what point
Yes.
does it not become helpful anymore? Because like I had to
Yes.
leave that QAnon group after a while. I'm like, cool. Well, the Jasara reset. I'm like, I heard that back in 2016. It hasn't happened yet. No one else is talking about it. Maybe some new people have awoken and so that's what their
Mm,
flavor of the month is. Awesome.
yeah.
I already heard about it. Maybe it can be coming. I don't have a timeline on it. Do I get excited though about thinking that it sort of might maybe come in the next
Mm,
20 years? No. Can I
mm,
do anything about it? No. So is that, it's like dancing, isn't it? Which conspiracy is kind of fun to
yeah.
entertain just for sheer pleasure, and which ones are scary and
Mm,
dark? Because gosh, the Hollywood
yeah.
pedo thing, that's like fucked
Yes.
up on all accords. So the implications with all of the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, the royal family, like, you know, we know that Prince Andrew is categorically lied on the record, and so Windsor is
Mm,
trying to cover it all up. Okay, great. Then you have some people that I love, like John
mm,
Legend's on the list. Okay, that's a bummer. I like his
Mm.
music. I think his voice sounds like sex. It's great. But, you know, um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a really interesting one.
I agree. Like I think, that I'm actually like super protective of my frequency above all else, because to be able to show up every single day, to be this human that I am at at the levels that we're playing at and stuff like that, holding space and time and energy for the humans that are within our realm, like it takes like a lot. And so very much it's
Mhm.
about like I don't watch a lot of news. I don't get into Facebook arguments with people and stuff like that, anymore. And 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 exactly, like I think we are the curators of our own reality anyway. So if I want to curate my existence in a way where I get to look at all these amazing shiny things over here, and that somehow helps to support me, to support the people that I'm here serving, like I'm kind of not against
Mm,
that. And it's not about not saying that
sure.
there aren't terrible things out there happening in the world. It's about trajectory and you know um and I think discernment, right? Being able to pick the directions that we want to go as a human being
Yep.
that is going to be the greatest frequency and help and support for humanity in a way, without necessarily ignoring all the pieces. But we would be basket cases, like literally, we wouldn't be able to get up in the day, right? Like if we actually did pay attention to all of the tragedy and all of the
Totally.
trauma and all of the pieces and things that are happening out there. So I think it's still about protecting our frequency and our energy, like what is helpful, like what are we ready to like feel into within reality, within our existence. Like I can go down a rabbit hole of secret space programs, but maybe I couldn't go down a rabbit hole of sex and trauma and child things like that or whatever. Maybe that doesn't suit right now, and that's actually okay, and that nobody should wrong
Yeah,
themselves for not turning a blind eye, but being able to alchemize at the level they can alchemize, because we only have a certain amount of capacity, and you're living one existence. So I
totally.
kind of am a believer in the curation of that existence so that I get to live the best existence, but I want you to as well, and I want everybody else to as well, whatever that
Yeah.
looks like, within reason. No, do no harm. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Agreed.
I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, it's it's just choosing a life, choosing
Mm.
what comes into your vortex and what you want to consume, and at what point is it helpful, and what can you do, like even if you're listening to this podcast episode as well, it's like take the meat, leave the bones. What can you apply to your life? What's relevant? What resonates? What are you going to go away and Google after
Yeah, and
this?
what's not
And then leave the
exactly.
rest, and everyone's going to get
Yes,
something
yeah,
different, and it's
yeah. And we'll
great.
take it in a different way with their different perspectives and life and all the things. Yeah. And I think, you made a really great point before, just to bring it home, before I throw a final question at you, that that code that COVID times really was a microcosm of all of that there was a lot of, and I say this with love, I don't say this with judgment, but what I saw was um, a lot of heat and a lot of hate and a lot of fear and a lot of wronging and better than or worse than or this side or that side.
Mm,
And I feel, that, that in itself was a bit of a shame, where it goes into those realms of unhelpful thinking or an unhelpful way of being, and where the contrast is too great, and again, whatever side people landed on many of the debates that happened throughout COVID, yeah, like we spoke about before, to be able to sit back and say, hey, this is what I think, and this is, where I land, and I can respect that you've landed somewhere else, and that's okay too. And I will actually say one controversial thing around this, actually. The piece that disappointed me over COVID times was that there were a lot of people that I greatly respected that I thought were actually more harbingers of fear and hate than than some of the others. So even within the conscious realm of things, even within the, you know, the new earth kind of collectives and woke culture, that actually quite often it was them passing a lot of great judgment. And that was the piece that actually you know, upset or disheartened me a little bit, because I was like, if you're woke, you know, or if you're at a higher frequency or a higher perspective, then you would never be looking back and down on other people who are doing the best that they can in this time with the information that they have. You know, if we are 5D beings and more enlightened and whatever it may be, there is no 5D being that would be looking back at someone else with judgment, calling them sheeple and saying, you know, ha ha, little 3D beings, you sheeple, like rah rah rah, like following, you know, like government standards, like, you know, you'll all learn, or maybe you won't. Like, I was like, there's something, yeah, so disconnected with that. Like, that's not right. That's not 5D. Like, you'd be like, oh my God, compassion. They're still journeying, and there is no better than or worse than. It's just different.
1000%. Yeah, absolutely. that definitely was there for me as well. Like, that's certainly something I also observed, which I thought was really interesting.
Yes.
And probably the second thing related to that was the people who I saw who were really passionate about this, the ones who were woke and, like, you know, very much for the movement and protesting every weekend. What I also observed was, whilst they were trying to come across as really confident online, it was masquerading the fear. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So you know, if we look at 5D, or fear and love cannot coexist. So it's in the place of fear then that you do have the projections and you do have the judgment. If you're in a space of love, you're not judging that person made a decision to get a jabby jab because that meant that they could continue working to put food on the table so that they could survive. Like, that to me is very loving within their context. How on earth could we judge them for being like, you don't have the balls to stand up? Like, hold on a second. So yeah, that's what I found really interesting.
Yes. And, you know, and in that, being the observer, and, you know, and clearly, you know, in my own instance, I definitely tried not to pass judgment, you know, upon that either, because that just sort of defeats the purpose. But being that observer, you know, as I said, it still elicited emotion in me, and of a bit of disappointment and of sadness and of like confusion. But it also, you know, gave power to what I truly believe, you know, in terms of conscious and 5D and compassion and love and everything you just said. Like, you know, if somebody, you know, made the best decision they could at any given time because they needed to put food on the table, why would I ever, you know, discredit that? And it's not even about, you know, being on this side of vax or that side on vax by any means. You know, I recently said in my last podcast, you know, because I was discussing this a little bit, and I said, you know, pro-choice, pro any individual's choice. And I did recently discuss this actually, like within a podcast, because I was talking about my own story of those few years in there and my own health journey and, you know, and relationship and all of these amazing things. And, you know, and so where I landed, you know, was always in the human perspective, was always in the compassionate perspective of pro-choice, you know, not on one side of the fence or the other. Like, everyone has a right to choose for themselves, you know, and in one way, shape or form, and nobody else really, you know, has the right to say that is wrong or that is not, you know, the decision, because as you said, you know, people are weighing up so many more facets, you know, like and it's not so simplistic, you know, and I don't feel it needed to be a us versus them debate when it could just be one of compassion and one of, you know, pro-choice for any individual to make their sovereign choice for themselves.
Yeah, Yeah, I agree.
That. So I have one more question for you. I ask all of my guests this, Ryan, is if you could give like one piece of advice, in relation to the strategy, the energetics of seven-figure business, in relation to cosmic money, in relation to behavioral, whatever aspect feels aligned for you to bring forward for them, what would that piece of information advice be?
Go and do what you already told yourself you were going to do, and you've stopped yourself from doing it. You already likely know what the
Powerful.
next step is. Go and do that.
Yes. Yes. And I think with that, we've dropped the words confirmation bias here a few times today, and I truly believe in the universe sending messages as well. Like it's already showing up in their reality, whatever that next best right move is. So just fucking take the step.
Totally. What you're going to learn in the process is cool.
Yes.
Like, what if there were no wrong decisions in life? There were lessons and consequences. Okay, great. Then you're completely free to make decisions and then learn from them. So that is incredibly liberating. That for someone who's listening to this, that could be totally life transforming, because it means therefore that you can say yes to the opportunity, the relationship, the job, starting the business, writing the book, starting a new health kick, whatever it is, and go and do it and then figure it out along the way. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Send Sky a message if you want a coach to help you build it all out.
Thank you for the plug. Yes, I really love the analogy. I think you'll like this one as well, right? Like it's like what is it? It's like having the orgasm without the sex. And it's like, why wouldn't we want both, right? Like the actual sex, the act of the whole thing, right, is leading up to like that amazing, tipping point catalyst, whatever, the orgasm itself. And so, like, yes, maybe instantaneous orgasms like this would be amazing. However, like it's the journey as well. And so we get to have it both. So, take the actions, learn the lessons along the way, pivot, measure, adapt. And and it's all divine and perfect as is.
Yeah, the journey's like foreplay.
Yeah.
Just get to enjoy the process, get wetter along the way, have fun. It's great.
Perfect. So on that note for everyone, Ryan, oh my goodness, thank you so much for having for coming and being here with me today, having this amazing conversation. As I said, regardless of podcast or not, I could sit here and chat to you all day long about all these amazing things. Pick your brain over a coffee. You can shout, that's fine. And I really look forward
I can
to
do that when you move.
I know, that's it. When I come and live on the ley lines of the Gold Coast, where all the work people are at, I so very much appreciate, as you said as well, every conversation that we ever have is a little bit fascinating and a little bit interesting and a little bit of a wormhole. And so I really hope that people go out there and look you up, find you on Facebook, start a conversation with you in one way, shape, or form. And you're amazing. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on today. It's been such a joy. So thanks again, Sky.